off right now. Football at 4, Andrew DiCecco, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. He joins us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. It's we typically have a happy hour Friday, Andrew, but this has not been a fun day with all the news of the coronavirus coming down. When you hear that there are players from other sports leagues now testing positive all over the state of Florida, do you start to wonder what's going to happen with the NFL?
Yeah, you do, because these are sports where you don't have – you're not talking about a 90-man roster like you are with the NFL. And when in the NFL's case, you're bringing guys from all different parts of the country coming together for training camp. So the likelihood of none of those guys testing positive for COVID is becoming more and more unlikely as you're seeing these cases rise. I know you saw the story today, or I guess it came out yesterday, about Anthony Fauci about having a bubble for the season for the NFL season to kind of go on. That was kind of odd to me because just a month ago he said it would be feasible to have the season without fans, and then to do a heel turn a month later and suggest that they kind of they implement the NBA's bubble concept. For the NFL to do that, given the amount of people it takes to put together the show for a Sunday, and while abiding by the social distance guidelines, that just to me seems unbelievably impossible. Yeah,
I was going to say, I mean, can you see the NFL even being able to pull off a bubble situation? I think for the NBA it works. They have a unique situation at Wild World of Sports. They have 3 arenas. They have the facilities to house these guys so you can keep them in a bubble. How do you keep 53-man rosters? How do you have multiple – where's a place that has multiple football fields that can handle having that many games going on? I mean, it just seems that a bubble situation for the NFL, while not impossible, seems a little less feasible.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about upwards of 100 folks that it takes to really get an NFL game, off the ground on a Sunday. So it's really not feasible to me. It's nearly impossible to be able to kind of move forward with that whole bubble concept. Without that, I mean, it's kind of tough, Mike, to see what's going to happen here. I mean, I know that we stand here, 12 weeks away from the season, but every day we seem to hear something new about coronavirus, and it's really it's getting closer to training camp, and it's starting to affect all these different sports. So it really clouds the outlook right now.
That's what I was going to say, is there's so much knowledge that we're learning every single day, or so we think we are. Everything just keeps popping up. But I was going to say, as we stand today, are you lacking confidence that we are going to see the training camp start on time? And, I mean, what about fans in the stands? Are you losing confidence in that every single day as well?
Well, Hunter, I think the fans in the stands I think we're a far cry away from that right now, to be honest with you. And as far as, training camp being, starting on time, that's becoming more and more unlikely to me as all these different cases start to rise. I mean, you saw yesterday that I believe there was a Tampa Bay Buccaneers assistant coach that tested positive for COVID. Look in the college game, the Houston Cougars, a couple of those guys tested positive for it. You look at the Phillies. It's just becoming more and more you're starting to see the cases rise. And as we move into the fall, I think, we get to August and September, I do anticipate a spike, obviously, with, it's going to coincide with flu season. So all these different variables at play, it's kind of difficult to see it, starting on time.
Anthony DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Yeah, the training camp thing, because a couple of weeks ago, I think we were having this conversation about, wow, they might have mini camps. It sounded like things were going a positive direction, but it sounded like you just said that you think it's more unlikely that training camp starts on time. And I think there were some coaches last week that were kind of speaking off the record of saying, I don't know how we start on time, not only training camp, but the season.
Yeah, you saw Ed Werder's tweet. I believe it was, a few days ago or this week, and he mentioned that there's 3 different NFL head coaches that one said that the fact that that Ezekiel Elliott tested positive and that came out, and a couple of the Texans players that was quote unquote scary, and then you saw another head coach that he said pretty much was like, there's no way that this can start on time. They need to push back the start of the season. So I mean, you're starting to hear some rumblings now from some pretty prominent figures that are kind of a little hesitant to move forward with this, as it's currently expected to go forward.
Yeah, 49ers players, by the way, I don't know. Did you mention the 49ers? They were working out in Nashville that tested positive. So now you got Florida, you got some Nashville, you got 49ers, you got Phillies, you got Tampa Bay Lightning, you got players on the PGA Tour, you got a lot of college players. It's becoming, it's real. It's sad that there's the possibility that this doesn't end up getting here. And this has been a real interesting week for the Eagles, that is, Andrew. And you wonder, the whole Brandon Brooks thing, how much has this whole COVID-19 affected their decision-making process on moving forward? Like, typically, do you think they would have made calls, worked some guys out, had some guys at the NovaCare complex, maybe had a couple of, workouts with some, free agents, but you can't do it because of this? How much has this affected them possibly making a move on Brooks? Or is this just a time of the year where teams wouldn't be making a lot of moves or working very quickly anyway?
I mean, this is usually the dead period, Mike, that you don't see a ton of transactions. I mean, you could look back to 2017. The Eagles they changed that by signing LeGarrette Blount, but this is typically teams have their short list of guys that they like to work out. You don't see a ton of movement right now, so a lot of the guys that are on their short list are likely going to be available throughout the summer should their plan with Matt Pryor or Nate Herbig or whomever falter. A lot of these guys will probably still be there, and they can bring them in.
Yeah, and yesterday I guguess there was a quote-unquote rumor floating around that Joe Thuney from the Patriots, hey, what about calling them and, see if you could possibly work out a trade. What do you think is, at this point, the most likely situation? Maybe making a trade for a higher-profile guy, bringing in another street free agent like a Warford, sticking in-house with what you got?
Well, moving forward, I would stick with what you have. Give Matt Pryor that vote of confidence going into training camp. He's going to have a couple young guys there, like a Nate Herbig, who was in the system last year, to kind of push him. And you know what? If for some reason it's not working out, they're not seeing the progression, then you make a phone call get a Larry Warford in there, get a Ronald Leary in there. Maybe if it gets to the certain point where you really have your doubts and you don't like the options that are out there, maybe you make a late August trade and maybe a guy like, Rasul Douglas is included in it or something like that.
If Jason Peters was to return, do you think left tackle is the only position in play?
For Jason Peters, not necessarily, Hunter. I think they want Andre Dillard to win the role, and they're showing him that they're giving him that confidence that they have in him to move forward with him by not signing Jason Peters. But like we were talking about earlier this week, is Jason Peters also, he also intimated that he would be open to playing guard to extend his career. So I think if he is brought in, you have that insurance, as a fallback plan. If the Andre Dillard situation doesn't quite play out like they anticipated, but I think that he could seamlessly step in and play guard. He's a Hall of Fame player, so he's going to be able to seamlessly step in at pretty much any position on the offensive line, probably except center.
Now, an interesting point that Trey Thomas brought up on Tuesday's show, that you don't think about all that much when talking about moving guys around. But, number one, Jason Peters has played left tackle. Right guard is the spot they need filled. So he had to switch from left to right. Number two, moving from tackle to guard, what people don't really realize, and this is something that I thought was kind of eye-opening, was you're going up against defensive ends who aren't nearly as big or physical most of the time than defensive tackles. Peters was having a hard time, staying healthy as a tackle. How do you anticipate him staying healthy playing the guard spot up against bigger, over 300-pound defensive tackles? That's a lot of wear and tear on your body, is what Trey Thomas said.
Yes, you said it right. So moving on the inside presents its own unique set of challenges. You're playing in a phone booth when you're playing guard, and you're going against these you have to be a mauler on the inside. You're going against a lot of penetrating defensive tackles that are powerfully built guys, and you're getting your Aaron Donalds that are quick and can beat you with a bunch of different moves. So leverage is paramount when you're playing the inside, playing on the inside. So it is going to be more of a wear and tear on a guy like Jason Peters. So, if you're expecting him to play, to be healthy for the entire season, that's not very likely. I think you'll get some high level play from Jason Peters, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be for an entire season.
Jeff Mosher of Inside the Bird said that one of his sources claimed Nate Herbig can actually give Matt Pryor a little bit of run for his money. Have you seen anything in film, or have you seen anything out of Nate Herbig to say, you know what, he might have a chance against Matt Pryor to win that spot?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff there. So Nate Herbig played guard at Stanford, and if you guys are familiar with Stanford and their blocking schemes at all, they are just that power. They run the football a lot, and he's a powerful guard. He moves very well. He's a smart, intelligent player. That obviously he was able to take everything the Eagles threw at him and make the team. It was a dark horse to make the team. He kind of emerged out of nowhere, and it says a lot that he wasn't a factor at all last season. He was inactive for the majority of the season, I believe, maybe even the entire season. So moving forward, they have enough confidence in him to think that, they kept him on the roster for a reason, to think that he could contend for, a prominent role this year. And now you're hearing his name up there in contention for the right guard spot. I think that speaks volumes of what they think of Nate Herbig and where they've seen his progression from year one to year two.
And then let's not forget about Driscoll, too. 4th-round pick. I mean, you might say, fourth rounder, but in offensive line world, 4th round, a lot of times you anticipate a 4th rounder being able to help you.
Yeah, 4th round is far from a throwaway pick. They had Jack Driscoll is going to very much be in their plans moving forward. Unfortunately, the shortened offseason, we're not really going to get a full outlook of what he's capable of, because he's going to be behind the 8 ball most likely. But he's a guy that, like I said, when I saw him at the East West Shrine Bowl, I saw him as a right tackle, but I saw him more likely that he'd be a guard at the NFL level, possibly even a center. He's an athletic guy. He doesn't have that nasty streak. He's not that mauler that you like of the Juan Castillo days, so to speak. But he does have a lot of athleticism and some positive traits that lead you to believe that he'll be in the mix moving forward. Probably not this season, but down the line.
And the tough part about this whole coronavirus and possibly having training camp delayed is having the competition would make whoever wins that, you would think, particularly better. I mean, if Matt Pryor ends up winning, it's because he had 4 guys coming after his position.
Yeah, exactly. Competition brings out the best out of everybody. And like we were saying, there isn't much of those traditional training camp battles that we've grown accustomed to under the Andy Reid era. A lot of these jobs are kind of predetermined through the off season, but this and probably the cornerback situation, the second cornerback spot, are 2 of those, and the 3rd defensive end role, by the way, are 3 roles to kind of keep an eye on. That you're gonna have a lot of different challengers here. So it's gonna, like you said, it's gonna bring out the best of every player. And if Matt Pryor emerges as the victor, then he's all the better for it.
Here's a question I'd like to, I know you did these divisional breakdowns. We talked a little bit about Washington and New York last week. We got to dive deeper into Dallas one of these days. But on that note, what does the Brandon Brooks injury do in terms of those 2 rosters? Does it swing one way above the other in Europe? Does losing Brooks swing things in Dallas's favor enough, or do you think not, that losing Brooks is still a loss, but that Philly's still better? What does that injury mean inside the NFC East?
Well, don't get me wrong. The loss to Brandon Brooks, that was a devastating blow, and he's the best guard in football. He's very difficult. You're not going to replace him. All you can do is hope to, provide a level of competent play from that position. But the Eagles have proven over the years that they're well equipped to have the next man up mentality, and they get guys ready to step in and play. You saw that with Big V. You saw that with Matt Pryor in the playoff game last year, and 2017 was a prime example of that as well. So it definitely hurts the Eagles. I think they're going to have a little bit more of a struggle with the Washington Redskins on their defensive line, but I don't think it kind of sways the pendulum one way or the other. I think the Eagles are still the class of the NFC East.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the best guard in football, because I kind of got into a heated debate this week with someone, and it was Zach Martin. They were saying that Zach Martin is the best guard in football. I'm just curious. We're talking about Dallas. Do you think that Zach Martin has a upper hand on Brandon Brooks when it comes to that debate?
Well, you can certainly make a case for Zach Martin, and I think he's going to have a lot. He has a lot more left in his career to take that claim. But I think right now, as we stand right now, I think Brandon Brooks is the better guard. You can also make a case, Hunter, for Quentin Nelson from the Colts. So he's another guy that he's up there for top 1 or top 2 as well. So, but right now, I think it's Brandon Brooks. From everything he's done, everything he's had to overcome, the level of play that he's had, he's kind of flown under the radar, and he's just lately gotten, the praise that he really deserves. You saw what he did. He made the Pro Bowl after coming back from an 8-month injury, remarkably. I just think some of the things that he can do, and he has done, makes him the best guard in football.
He's Andrew DiCecco. It's Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. At A DiCecco NFL. You can read his stuff at 973ESPN.com. We'll get into his most recent piece on the website in just a second. What about the kid from Western Michigan at right guard, too? Wasn't there a kid, an unsigned free agent they brought in? I know that that's one of your specialties, finding these diamonds in the roughs.
Yeah, actually, when I did my Eagles outlook for Inside the Birds the other day, I listed 3 players that I thought were on the rise, and they're not going to be obvious picks, right? So I did John Hightower. I picked Raekwon Williams at defensive tackle and Luke Juriga, who you're mentioning from Western Michigan. He was a right guard for 3 years at Western Michigan. He played center last season. I believe he got $116,000 guaranteed signing with the Eagles. So they had kind of like Nate Herbig last year. He's one of those guys that they identified as being having potential for their future plans. And I think they stumbled on tremendous value with him. He's another Shrine Bowl guy. He was there with Jack Driscoll, and very athletic guy, quick, intelligent. He moved really well. He was excellent in space. So I think that he has these traits that lead you to believe that he could kind of maybe snag one of those final roster spots and become a factor, in the coming seasons.
Yeah, I'm really interested when they get to training camp. You mentioned right guard is obviously going to be a big story now. I mean, who's going to win that spot? What are they going to do? Are they going to go outside? We had Sal Powell on earlier. He said, I would have signed Jason Peters yesterday, and not necessarily to make him the right guard, but just to add more depth. Would you anticipate that some veteran gets signed just to add more depth to this team?
Oh yeah, I think that's definite. It's just a matter of when that happens. I think that you want to bring in a veteran to at least challenge Matt Pryor, because like you said, you want to throw all these different contenders at him, and if he emerges the victor, and then that he's the guy for the job. So you don't just want to have a bunch of unproven players pushing Matt Pryor. You want to bring in that veteran that's done it before. Larry Warford would probably make the most sense because he's a Pro Bowl guard. He's more of a run, more like that road grader.
If you bring in a guy like him, is it to start or to sit?
Well, I think if you bring in Larry Warford, I mean, his resume, you're not just obviously going to hand him the job, but he's going to be the front runner for sure. I think that you would more likely see, I think what you're more likely going to see is like a guy like a Ronald Leary or one of those, or maybe a trade in August. But I think that there's going to be a veteran that they bring in one way or the other. It's just a matter of when.
A big headline today in the NFL is Jamal Adams and the Eagles on his list. Any possibilities in that? I mean, it does seem a little bit, a little bit of a long shot, but is there any possibility?
He made the list.
Yeah, he's
right?
he's interested, all right. But are we interested in him, I guess, is the next question.
Okay, so here's what we know about Jamal Adams. He's got 2 years left on his rookie deal. He's due to make $3.5 million this season. He wants to be paid like the top safety in football. Right now, I believe that's Bears safety Eddie Jackson, who I think makes $14.6 million. Jamal Adams is the best safety in football. He can do pretty much anything you ask of him. I covered the Jets for a couple of weeks last season, early in the season, and he's the quintessential leader. He didn't duck and dodge from any tough questions. He stood tall and answered everything. He held himself accountable, and he's gonna get his payday. It's just I don't think the Jets are going to entertain anything without, at least 2 first-round picks on the table there. And, when you assess the Eagles roster, where do they put most of their emphasis on the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line? And when I look at a guy like Yannick Ngakoue, who pretty much campaigned to leave Jacksonville for months now, and the Eagles weren't in heavy pursuit of him, well, then I don't see them being, I don't see Jamal Adams being in play.
Great stuff, Andrew DiCecco. Speaking of Adams, he's a safety. What about in the secondary? You wrote a piece for 97.3 ESPN.com about a couple of lesser-known guys in the defensive backfield that could be vying for a spot on the roster.
Yeah, so when you're putting together your 53-man rosters, a name to consider, and I know my friend Mike Kay had him on there, is Craig James. He was on the roster last year. I believe he played in 14 games. Started the Jets game, the infamous Luke Falk game, but he was a force on special teams. I believe he finished fifth on the Eagles with the most snaps. So he already has that part of his game. And, when you look at guys like Nate Gary and TJ Edwards, who were focal points on that unit last year, they're going to be starters now. So you have a need at special teams. And he stepped in and played adequately on defense when asked. He has showed some positive traits that lead you to believe that he could be maybe not be a sub package guy, but he can step in if you need him and play at a relatively decent level. And he also has a punt return background. He spent his first 2 seasons at Minnesota, and he was a punt returner for the Golden Gophers. So he does have that versatility to his game. Traymon Smith is another interesting guy. He was brought in December. He bounced around from the Chiefs to the Packers to the Eagles. He was, as a rookie, he was on the all-rookie team as a kick returner. I believe he had over 800 yards returning. And last summer, the Chiefs used him they tried to transition him to running back. That obviously didn't work out. He's more of a raw player, as you can see. They wanted to make him a running back. He has that athleticism. I think he'll be in heavy contention for a practice squad position. But there's a couple names right there. Graylin Arnold's another one from Baylor who had 6 interceptions last season. Probably should have returned for a senior season, and he would have been drafted. But, the Eagles got tremendous value there. So there's going to be some names there that are going to be in contention for that.
Something to keep an eye on. Hopefully camp is on time. We shall see. We were pretty optimistic last week. Optimism has changed here in the last week or so. Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, at A DiCecco NFL here on a Sports Bash Happy Hour Friday. So what's the happy hour beverage of choice for this weekend?
I think I'm going to go with the tried and true. Go with some Victory Dirt Wolf. How about you guys?
I hate to say it, all right? I might have to dive into the White Claw.
Hey, man, one of these days I'm going to try it. I'm not going to knock it until I try it.
It's uninspiring is what it is. But, I'm doing this keto thing. So it's like, the keto has different grades of food and drink. And like it's A, B, C, D, and F. And like F is avoid at all costs. These heavy IPAs are A or F, avoid at all costs. But these stupid White Claws are A's.
Why are they stupid? Why are they stupid?
I'm just not excited about it. I want to have fun this weekend. All right. Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. Thanks, pal.
You got it, guys. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, man. He'll be back on Tuesday for Football at 4.